What's the year that Cash Money started?
I came home from jail in 1989, December 10th. I started my label, got my federal tax ID number February 10th. I signed with Universal 1997, May 10th.
And still Universal's a partner?
I've been there 23 years. Same team.
You've been getting money for 23 years from Universal. Them checks must be looking crazy.
Just to keep it G with you, bro, I done made $2 billion with Universal.
With Universal?
Yeah.
$1
billion of the dollars I broke down with Wayne, Drake, and Nicki.
And now is Drake still signed to Cash Money? Are they all three still technically signed?
We're in business together for life.
Okay.
It's a long time.
When you cutting checks like that, ain't no nigga going nowhere.
Right.
All right.
Money long, nigga strong.
All right. That's
In December 2014, one of hip-hop's biggest stars publicly exploded, accusing his own label of blocking his album and withholding millions. That outburst kicked off a $51 million legal war that cracked open the hidden machinery of contracts, royalties, and ownership battles. Behind the numbers was a system engineered to extract staggering wealth, while artists and even hit producers watched their fortunes vanish. How did the music industry let this happen for over 2 decades? The answer reveals how $2 billion quietly slipped away, and the power moves nobody saw coming. On December 4th, 2014, Lil Wayne took to Twitter and sent shockwaves through hip-hop. In a series of raw, late-night messages, he accused Cash Money Records, his label since childhood, of refusing to release his long-awaited album, Thought Carter 5. He wrote, "I want off this label and nothing to do with these people. I am a prisoner, and so is my creativity." Fans were stunned. For years, Wayne had called Birdman his father. Now he was airing out the family business for millions to see. The album delay was not just a missed release date. Wayne had spent months teasing Thought Carter 5, dropping singles and promising it would be his best work yet. But as 2014 drew to a close, the album never appeared. Instead, Wayne's frustration boiled over in public. The tweets kept coming. He wrote, "I am sorry for the fans, but me and my creativity are being held hostage." He thanked his supporters, but made it clear this was not just about music. It was about trust, money, and control. Within hours, hashtags like hashtag Free Weezy and hashtag Let the Carter V drop trended worldwide. Fans flooded Cash Money's social pages, demanding answers. Some threatened boycotts. Others posted old interviews where Birdman called Wayne his son, now replayed with a bitter edge. The outcry was not limited to social media. Hip-hop news outlets ran headlines about Wayne's meltdown and the label's silence. Comment sections filled with speculation. Was this about money? Was Birdman really blocking the album? Would Wayne ever release music again? Behind the scenes, the stakes were even higher. Wayne was not just an artist, he was the engine of Cash Money's empire. His albums had sold millions, and his Young Money imprint had launched Drake and Nicki Minaj. But now the man who helped build the label was locked out of his own work. In interviews, Wayne sounded exhausted. He told radio hosts he had no control over his album's fate. Every day the project sat on the shelf, Wayne lost momentum and millions in potential sales, touring, and streaming. The frustration was not new. Rumors of money problems and missing payments had circled Cash Money for years. But Wayne's public outburst made the tension impossible to ignore. Industry insiders whispered about advances gone unpaid and contracts rewritten behind closed doors. Producers and writers who worked on Thought Carter 5 wondered if they would ever see a royalty check. For Wayne, the delay was personal. It was a public humiliation after 2 decades of loyalty. As 2014 ended, Wayne's tweets hung in the air like a warning shot. The label stayed silent. Birdman refused to comment. The album remained in limbo. The public meltdown had done more than expose a family feud. It had set the stage for a legal battle that would drag Cash Money's business practices into the spotlight and force the industry to confront what happens when the artist who made the label turns against it. In that moment, the story stopped being about music and became about power, ownership, and the price of loyalty. On January 28, 2015, Lil Wayne filed a 21-page federal lawsuit in New York. putting hard numbers and contract terms on what had been whispered about for years. The complaint named Birdman, Ronald Slim Williams, and Cash Money Records as defendants, and it did not hold back. The headline figure was $51 million, an amount that covered not only unpaid advances for Thay Carter 5, but years of alleged underpayments and a missing share of Young Money profits. The lawsuit laid out a detailed timeline. Wayne claimed he was owed an $8 million advance for starting Thay Carter 5, plus another $2 million on delivery, money that, according to the filing, never arrived. The complaint included a schedule of advances, referencing contracts that spelled out these payments in black and white. Wayne's lawyers pointed to a pattern. Cash Money would promise large sums for each album, then delay or withhold the funds, leaving Wayne to record and promote projects without ever seeing the money he was contractually guaranteed. The advances were supposed to be straightforward, but they never materialized. But the numbers went deeper than unpaid advances. Wayne's suit accused Cash Money of freezing him out of Young Money True Value. The complaint alleged that Wayne was supposed to hold a 49% ownership stake in Young Money Entertainment, the label he founded in 2005. Instead, copyright registrations and royalty flows showed Cash Money holding all the cards. The suit charged that Birdman and Slim had registered Young Money copyrights solely under Cash Money name, sidelining Wayne from the profits of two of the biggest stars in music, Drake and Nicki Minaj. The complaint demanded a proper accounting for all Young Money revenue, including profits from those artists, and called out Cash Money refusal to provide statements or allow audits. Ownership was the crux of the dispute. The filing did not just mention missed payments. It described a system where Wayne's creative output and the artists he brought to the label were used to generate hundreds of millions in revenue, while the promised shares, advances, and royalties stayed locked up at the top. Wayne's lawyers cited the 1998 Universal Distribution deal, highlighting how Cash Money's unusually high profit split and master ownership gave Birdman even more leverage over the artists downstream. The complaint argued that every year Thay Carter 5 sat unreleased, Cash Money continued to benefit from Wayne's back catalog, while Wayne himself lost out on sales, touring, and streaming income. The revenue flows told a different story than the contracts. Wayne's legal team attached supporting documents, draft contracts, advance schedules, and copyright records. The suit called for the court to enforce the original deal terms, release Thay Carter 5, and award Wayne his share of Young Money profits. The $51 million figure was more than just a demand for back pay. It was a direct challenge to the way Cash Money did business. For years, the label's finances had been shrouded in secrecy. Now, Wayne's lawsuit threatened to drag the entire accounting process into the open. Accounting was at stake. The complaint did not address how the case would end or whether a settlement was likely. It focused on the numbers, the $10 million in missing advances, the 49% stake in Young Money, the lack of royalty statements, and the blocked release of one of the most anticipated albums in hip-hop. For the first time, the conflict was not just about rumors or tweets. It was about contract clauses, line item payments, and a paper trail that stretched back more than a decade. The legal offensive forced Cash Money to respond, and it put the label's business model under a microscope for the whole industry to see. Court filings stacked up as months turned into years. Lil Wayne's lawsuit against Cash Money and Universal sat in federal court unresolved, while Thay Carter 5 remained locked away. For fans, the album's absence became its own legend. For Wayne, the delay meant more than lost momentum. Every day the record stayed shelved, potential sales slipped away. Touring plans froze. Streaming revenue from new music never materialized. Behind the scenes, lawyers from both sides circled the same issues: unpaid advances, missing royalty statements, and the question of who truly owned Young Money's share of Drake and Nicki Minaj's empire. The legal standoff dragged on for over 3 years. Neither side budged. Wayne refused to drop his claims for the $8 million Carter 5 advance and the $2 million delivery payment he said he was owed. Cash Money, and Birdman in particular, kept their responses brief and their accounting closed. The public only caught glimpses. Wayne venting on mixtapes, Birdman insisting in interviews that everything would work out. Rumors swirled about mediation attempts, and back-channel pressure from industry heavyweights. But the main action stayed behind closed doors, buried in confidential filings and sealed exhibits. By early 2018, the pressure reached a breaking point. Wayne's team filed a notice of dismissal in federal court on May 23rd. The language was simple: all claims dismissed, each side bearing its own costs and attorney's fees. No dollar amount was disclosed, no details about who paid what or how much, but the implications were immediate. Wayne's contract with Cash Money was voided. They Carter 5, once a bargaining chip, was now his to release. Ownership of Young Money shifted to Wayne. The settlement, according to sources close to the case, included a payment from Universal Music Group, reportedly well over $10 million. Birdman's name was absent from the payout reports, a detail that did not go unnoticed in hip-hop circles. Wayne's attorney Howard King summed up the result in a single line: "He is his own man, a man that owns his assets, his music, and himself." For Wayne, the deal was not just about money. It was about autonomy, about finally controlling the label he built and the music he created. The settlement did not erase years of frustration, but it did clear a path forward. In September 2018, They Carter 5 finally dropped. The album debuted at #1, moving over 2 million units in its first week. Fans streamed it nonstop, and Wayne's name returned to the top of the charts. The release was more than a comeback. It was proof that, even after years in legal limbo, Wayne's music still mattered, and so did the question of who gets paid when the hits keep coming. The courtroom battle ended with a confidential deal, but the story did not close cleanly. The details of the settlement stayed locked away. The mechanics of how Cash Money and Birdman handled artist payments, advances, and royalties remained shrouded in secrecy. Wayne's victory was real, but partial. The album was free, the money was paid, but the system that allowed years of delays and withheld payments stayed in place. For every artist without Wayne's power or platform, the same contract structures and opaque accounting still shaped their careers. The standoff had ended, but the deeper questions about control and compensation in hip-hop's biggest deals were far from settled. In 1998, the real power of Cash Money's business model lived in the contract. Birdman and Slim negotiated a distribution deal with Universal that stunned the industry. The agreement guaranteed Cash Money $30 million over 3 years, but that was just the beginning. Most labels at the time gave up their masters and split profits 50-50 or worse. Birdman refused. Cash Money kept full ownership of its masters and publishing, while Universal took only a 20% cut for distribution. The label pocketed 80% of profits, an unheard of split. This structure meant the money flowed upstream. Universal advanced millions, $2 million a year for the label, plus $1.5 million per artist, up to 6 artists annually. But these advances were not gifts. Every dollar was recoupable, meaning before any artist saw royalties, the label had to pay back Universal from album sales. Cash Money controlled how those advances were divided, how costs were charged, and when artists got paid. The label set the rules for recoupment, and the accounting happened behind closed doors. Birdman's leverage did not stop at the distribution deal. By keeping the masters, he locked in the long-term value of every album and single. When Juvenile's 400 Degrees sold over 4 million copies, or when Lil Wayne's Carter series hit platinum, the bulk of the profits landed at the top. Artists received advances, sometimes as high as $1.5 million per project, but the real money was in the ownership. Every stream, every sample, every licensing deal sent money back to Cash Money first. For artists, the deal often looked simple on paper: get an advance, record the album, hope to recoup. But the fine print told a different story. Advances were recouped not just from album sales, but from touring, merchandise, and sometimes even publishing. If a project went over budget, the overage came out of the artist's future royalties. Studio costs, marketing, and video expenses were charged back at full price. If the artist did not recoup, the label kept the masters and the profit. Even blockbuster albums could leave artists with little to show once the accounting was done. The 80%, 20% split made Cash Money one of the most profitable labels in hip-hop. But it also set up a system where the artists who powered the label's rise, Juvenile, BG, and Lil Wayne, often found themselves chasing their own money or fighting for a share of the catalog they created. The numbers were clear. Birdman and Slim built a fortress around the masters, and every deal ran through their hands. For the artist, the cost of entry was high, and the door to ownership stayed locked. Juvenile's breakthrough came fast and loud. In late 1998, 400 Degrees hit the shelves and barely slowed down. The album's bounce-heavy sound and street anthems, led by Ha, turned regional buzz into national heat. By the end of 1999, 400 Degrees had sold over 4 million copies, earning a quadruple platinum plaque from the RIAA. The single backed that As Up blasted from car stereos and club speakers across America, becoming a cultural staple that still packs dance floors decades later. Cash Money's gamble on Juvenile paid off bigger than even Universal expected. The label's logo suddenly meant a guaranteed hit. Billboard charts tracked the album's climb as Ha and Back That As Up cracked the Hot 100 and crossed over to pop radio. MTV and BET put Juvenile's videos in heavy rotation. In the first year alone, 400 Degrees moved units at a pace that rivaled any major rap release of the era. The album's success turned Juvenile into a household name and pulled the rest of the Cash Money roster into the spotlight. The numbers told the story. 4 million copies sold in the U.S. meant tens of millions in retail revenue. Under the Cash Money and Universal deal, 80% of those profits went straight to Birdman and Slim after Universal's cut. For the first time, an independent Southern label had national distribution, major label marketing muscle, and total control of its masters. The money flowed in, and the label's profile soared. Juvenile became the face of a new era in hip-hop, one where a New Orleans crew could challenge the East Coast and West Coast for chart dominance. With every platinum certification, the stakes grew. Cash Money's artists were now proven hitmakers, and the label's catalog became a goldmine. The success of 400 Degrees set off a wave of new releases from BG, Turk, and Lil Wayne, each hoping to repeat Juvenile's numbers. The formula was clear: bounce beats, raw lyrics, and a business model that kept most of the money in-house. But as sales soared and the label's fortunes rose, the question of how those profits were divided started to matter more than ever. Juvenile's relationship with Cash Money began as a partnership built on trust and local pride. By the early 2000s, that trust was wearing thin. Despite the blockbuster success of 400 Degrees and the Hot Boys era, Juvenile's royalty checks never matched the scale of his hits. In interviews, he spoke plainly. The money was not adding up. The label, flush with Universal's advances and a steady flow of platinum plaques, controlled the pace and size of every payout. Artists waited months for statements, and when they arrived, the numbers were hard to reconcile with the chart positions and sold-out shows. The cracks showed in 2002. Juvenile, tired of chasing payments, walked away from the label he helped put on the map. He described his exit as a last resort after repeated attempts to get clarity on royalties. He told reporters that it was not personal, it was business, and that he just wanted what he earned. His departure sent a message through the industry. Even the face of Cash Money could end up empty-handed. The issue was not just missed checks, it was the system behind them. Cash Money's contracts gave the label ownership of masters and publishing, while advances were recouped from everything: album sales, touring, even merchandising. Studio costs, video budgets, and promotional expenses were all deducted before any royalties reached the artist. If a project ran over budget, the shortfall came out of future earnings. For Juvenile, this meant that even after selling millions, he owed the label before the label owed him. Other artists noticed. BG and Turk echoed similar complaints, describing a pattern where every new release brought more deductions and fewer answers. The royalty statements, when they came, were dense and opaque. Attempts to audit the books led nowhere. The frustration was not just about the money. It was about feeling powerless in the face of a system designed to keep artists in the dark. Juvenile's exit in 2002 was more than a career move. It was a warning that success under the cash money model came with a hidden cost. The artists who built the catalog rarely saw a fair share of its value. For every platinum single, the real profits stayed locked up at the top while the creators moved on, still chasing what they were owed. Producer points sound simple on paper, but the math behind them is anything but. In hip-hop, a point usually means 1% of an album's royalties, promised to the producer for every record sold or streamed. Mannie Fresh, as Cash Money's in-house beatmaker, was supposed to earn a set number of points for each track he produced, but those points only paid out after the label recouped all its costs, including advances, studio fees, video budgets, marketing, even tour support. If an album went over budget, the overage got tacked onto the artist's bill, not the label's. Every dollar spent came out of the same pot producers and artists were waiting to collect from. Royalty statements showed a ladder. First, Universal took its 20% cut. Then Cash Money kept 80%. But before anyone else saw a dime, the label subtracted every recoupable expense. Only after those costs were paid back did artist and producer points start to count. In practice, this meant even platinum records could leave producers like Mannie Fresh chasing checks for years. The label's control over accounting kept everyone guessing. For most, back-end money never arrived. Points on paper, but nothing in the bank. This system did not just slow down payments, it locked producers and artists out of the real profits, while the label share kept growing with every sale and stream. Mannie Fresh didn't just shape the Cash Money sound, he built it from the ground up. For nearly a decade, his beats powered hits for Juvenile, Lil Wayne, BG, and the Hot Boys, making him one of the most influential producers in Southern rap. But when it came to compensation, the story turned sour. Mannie has spoken openly about years of missing payments and confusing royalty statements. In interviews, he's described waiting months for checks that never arrived, despite his name on platinum singles and albums. He once said he was the producer, the engineer, the DJ, and sometimes the songwriter, but when the money came in, he was always last in line. The frustration grew as the label's profits soared. Mannie's contracts promised him points on every record he produced, but the fine print meant those points only paid out after the label recouped all its costs. With Cash Money controlling the books, Mannie was left chasing numbers he couldn't verify. The lack of transparency wore him down. By 2005, he decided to walk away, calling it a business decision. He told reporters he just wanted what he earned. For Mannie Fresh, the fallout wasn't just about dollars. It was about respect and recognition for the work that built an empire. Mannie Fresh's exit from Cash Money in the mid-2000s sent a ripple through the industry. For nearly a decade, his sound defined the label, yet his departure made clear just how deep the payment issues ran. Mannie was not just a hired gun, he was the architect behind hits that sold millions. But as Cash Money's catalog grew in value, his share of the profits stayed stuck on paper. Years of waiting for royalty checks and struggling to make sense of dense, delayed statements wore him down. Even platinum albums did not guarantee a payout. Mannie described the frustration of seeing his name on chart-topping singles while still chasing basic compensation. By 2005, he had had enough. Walking away was not just about the money, it was about principle. His decision echoed the voices of artists who had left before him, all pointing to the same pattern. Cash Money's financial model rewarded loyalty with promises, not payments. Mannie's departure left a hole in the label's sound and signaled to the rest of the industry that even the most essential contributors could be shut out when the book stayed closed. Verified legal filings and sales data revealed the lower bound of what artists lost under Cash Money's control. Lil Wayne's 2015 federal lawsuit set a headline figure, $51 million in unpaid advances and withheld profits, including an $8 million advance for Thay Carter 5, another $2 million on delivery, and a claimed 49% stake in Young Money that never materialized. These numbers came directly from contracts and royalty schedules attached to the complaint. The suit also referenced years of missing royalty statements and blocked audit requests, which is hard evidence that large sums went unaccounted for. Wayne's case is the most thoroughly documented, but it's not the only one. Producer lawsuits and public settlements, like Bangladesh's claim over Emily and Jazz Prince's suit for a share of Drake's profits, add millions more in documented shortfalls. Early Hot Boys members, including Juvenile and BG, described similar patterns, multi-platinum records, but royalty checks that didn't match the sales. While many claims were settled privately, the public record supports a cumulative range in the mid-hundreds of millions. These are hard numbers, court-verified claims, and certified sales, without projecting future streaming or speculative catalog values. The conservative scenario, grounded in what's been proven in court and verified by royalty statements, puts the total economic friction between $400 million and $800 million. That's the baseline. What artists, producers, and writers can point to with receipts, before even considering the long tail of streaming and future earnings. Streaming changed the math for Cash Money's catalog almost overnight. Every year, millions of new plays stacked up, not just on new releases, but on decades-old hits. Tracks like Lollipop, Back That Ass Up, and A Milli racked up hundreds of millions of streams apiece. In the streaming economy, the real money isn't just in upfront sales or advances, it's in the long tail. Each play sends a fraction of a cent up the chain, but when you own the masters, those fractions add up fast. Industry analysts estimate that by 2017, Cash Money affiliated releases had cleared over 1 billion units across all formats. With streaming, catalog values soared. Major labels and private equity firms began paying 15 to 20 times annual royalties to buy out master rights. If you apply those kinds of multiples to the Cash Money catalog, especially factoring in Lil Wayne, Drake, and Nicki Minaj, the numbers balloon. A single year's streaming income from top tracks can reach 8 figures. Multiply that by 15 times or 20 times in a catalog valuation, and suddenly you are looking at 9-figure or even billion-dollar territory. When you add in the missing royalty shares, lost equity in Young Money, and producer points never paid, the potential exposure stretches far beyond what has been proven in court. Conservative estimates land in the hundreds of millions, but aggressive scenarios using streaming tail, catalog multiples, and the scale of the roster push the total exposure close to $2 billion. The upside risk isn't just theoretical, it's baked into every play, every year, for as long as those masters keep spinning. Every dollar generated by a Cash Money song starts its journey at the streaming platform. Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube each keep their own cut, but what is left, about 70 cents on every streaming dollar, flows to the distributor, Universal Music Group. Universal takes a 20% distribution fee right off the top. That means just 56 cents remains for Cash Money. From there, the real slicing begins. Cash Money controls the next stage, holding 80% of the profits after Universal's cut. But before artists or producers see a dime, Cash Money deducts all recoupable expenses, advances, studio time, music videos, marketing, and tour support. Each of these charges chips away at the pot. Even if a song racks up millions of streams, those costs get paid back first. Once expenses are covered, what is left is divided again. Artists typically receive a royalty rate somewhere between 15 and 20% of the net revenue, but only after everything is recouped. Producers are paid from the artist's share, often 3 to 5%, but only if the album or single is profitable. The label's share, what Birdman and Slim control, remains locked in from the start, guaranteed by ownership of the masters. In the end, the path of the streaming dollar is a waterfall. Each step down, more money pools at the top. By the time it reaches the artist or producer, only a small fraction remains. The rest stays with the label, protected by contracts, recoupment clauses, and the power of ownership. Today, streaming pays artists even less, and contracts remain just as complex. The fight over royalties and ownership is not history. It is the music industry's present tense. For every headline lawsuit, Countless artists still sign away their futures for advances that may never materialize. The real cost is not just dollars lost, but voices silenced. What would the sound of hip-hop be if every creator owned their work? Drop your thoughts below.